Okay, Donald. So let's begin with the first question.
All right.
How did you get into IT?
All right. So this is going to date me here. So I've gotten IT. My first introduction to IT was this movie called Hackers with Angelina Jolie. It was
Oh,
way back in the day. This is like in the 90s where they were
90s.
rollerblading and pagers and
Yeah.
beepers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So and war games and all that good stuff. So I got into it by watching like spy movies, and I wasn't really paying attention to like James Bond. I was paying attention to Q because he was the genius. He was always making the inventions, and
Mm,
he was always hacking in the systems and stuff like that. And I said I want to learn how to do that. So that's how I got into it. And
mm,
then my first real eye opening was like an Apple Mac 2E green screen, like unibody computer. It was teal, had a green screen, had a
mm.
5.25 inch floppy, and then I got in trouble at school for tearing it apart because I wanted to see how it works, like the circuitry and all that good stuff. So,
Come on, man.
of unfortunately, parents had to pay for that. But
Obviously.
that was my introduction in the computers. Period. And then I got to see like a mainframe, the old school mainframes. That was a whole room, and you used the punch cards and stuff like this. I'm telling you, I'm dating myself now, right?
I
And
read this in history.
yeah, see all this, and this is where I've been in this game for a very long time, and I'm telling you, I
uh,
started out from hey, where we're using like 10 megs was like, oh my god, we're never going to get it faster than this,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And
So
now
the
we're
flop
at
is it was flop disk?
yeah, floppy disk. So
Yeah.
floppy disk, they came in two sizes. There was 3.5, which
Yeah.
were the solid case ones, and then there
Mm,
was this thing called a 5.25, which was this big square that was five and
mm,
a quarter, and it had
yeah.
a ring in there, and
Yeah.
you would erase somebody's data. You would just take a magnet and run across it, and it would destroy all the data on it.
Whoa,
So
man.
that's where I started at, and
So
then
that's
that was my
90s.
headache. That was the wild wild west of the internet. Like like I said, I'm dating myself. I was in I was in
Yeah.
where Microsoft 3.1, Netscape. You still had to buy an internet browser, so Netscape just came out,
Mm,
stuff like that. So this is where the age of dial-up, where you had to have
mm,
two lines. Hey, if you were on the internet and your
yeah.
mom tried to pick up the phone, you'd hear that ping, 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 and then
Uh,
you get yelled at like get off the computer, stuff like that.
okay.
That's where I started at.
Man, that's way before Matrix, this
Yeah,
kind
way
of
before
thing,
the
right?
Matrix. Way before the Matrix.
Okay, so that sparked some curiosity on trying to get into this. And then what made you decide, like, okay, I'm going to start a career on this?
So, to be honest with you, networking and computers were the only thing I was really good at. Like that and math and science, obviously, right? Because you
Hmm.
have to be like a science guy to kind of get into networking. Really, to really love what you're doing, you really got to be like a science geeky kind of guy, right?
Okay.
So that was when I finally when I saw my first like router and switch and understood like the concept. When someone told me like, hey, you can plug a cable into this box and split out the connection
Hmm.
for, I think it was like 24 ports at the time, was like the biggest one, right? I was like, what? And then the concept of VLANs and all this other good stuff started coming into play. And that's when I decided, like when I first got my hands on it, that was it for me. That I didn't care about anything else. So I started reading those big IBM Red books, manuals, everything I could get my hands on. And I think when I first got my first computer, which I tore
Hmm.
apart again, it was a compact Presario, and the
Uh,
box was like this big, but the monitor was like this big. But I
okay.
wanted to see how the computer worked, so I started out on the PC hardware side, right? So
Hmm.
I was like,
Okay.
okay, that's how old school. And I always have we laugh. I'm like, you can tell how long somebody been in the game if you look at their hands and you see a bunch of cut marks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the
Yeah.
guys that were repairing capacitors and A sockets or socket 7 and
Hmm.
socket A, slot 7. That was the old like CPUs, and you would just run your knuckles across the capacitor and be bleeding and all that good stuff. You had to use those static bands and all that, so you don't put static discharge and fry a motherboard. Because it wasn't like today where you just, oh, I broke a motherboard, I just throw it in the trash. No, you actually had to fix it
Yeah.
with a soldering gun. So that's where I started, and that's when it was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
So, man, that okay. I don't want to say how long it was,
The-
but it
dating
was
myself.
impactful.
Yes, yes. I am the Wild Wild West Cowboys of the internet baby. Like that's my age. So what people are doing now, I'm like, man, you don't know how hard it was back when
Yeah.
I started. Like this is probably the easiest it will ever be because of
Damn.
AI and all this good stuff coming in. When you had to do
uh,
like, you had to go for a networking class, you had to learn frame relay.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I
no, nobody
remember. Yeah.
even knows about frame relay nowadays and
Not
Delcy and
anymore,
all
man.
that good stuff. You're not using that most of the time.
No way.
So sonic rings and all that. You're not even using that nowadays. Now you got it kind of easy as a network engineer because you don't have to learn so much. Like the
Yeah.
first CCNA was like, come on, I'm not doing this.
Okay, so that was impactful. You're curious. Okay,
Yeah.
this is something that you have in your DNA, and so you're breaking things.
hmm
Okay, and then you what? You go to college. You start taking training. What happened?
So it was down the rabbit hole, going to the public library and getting books and then trying out all this stuff you're going to learn. Always starts out with I'm trying to break it and then figure out how to put it back together, right? So it
Okay.
started with the hardware stuff, and then when I started getting advanced there, I was like, okay, there's more to this. And then I started going to the library, getting more public books, because I was actually trying to learn how to break into my school like network to see if I could do it, right? Because again, going back to Q and saying, okay, I see him hacking all the time, and I see the hacker movies.
Yeah.
It was always that point of view, like, how do these guys learn how to do this stuff, right? And that
Okay.
got me into the Linux journey and all that good stuff. And that is always curiosity. It's like, okay, it's teetering because I have a bunch of friends. We always said we always teetered the line of right before it got illegal. Like we get up to the line and say, okay, now we got to pull it back, right? Because
Okay.
if we go over this,
Yeah.
the feds is coming at this point. So it's like, all right, let's learn how to do it, but let's nowadays it's called ethical hacking. But if that wasn't back in the day, it was you did
Yeah.
this, you got in trouble. So it's like you
Yeah.
get up to the line and that's really it. I mean, it wasn't really a pen testing distro per se. You kind of just use Linux to get anything. And then, I think Kali was the first and the original version of Kali was a mess. And then
Yeah.
you had to fix that more than actually trying to do a pen test. Right.
Okay.
So again, if you go this interview, you're going to see it always started right at the line, and then it's like, okay, there's another level to this.
Okay. So it looks like you were curious about how things work,
Yep.
and but also something related with security because the hackers they're trying to break the security, right?
Yeah. It
They're
was.
trying
It
to
was.
break how things work.
Yeah. It was basically everything has a vulnerability in it. You just got to find it, right?
Yeah.
And there was and it's funny now because how people actually break into your network is not what they showed you in the movies. Like in the movies, they have you doing this brute force stuff and you got 18 different screens. In the real world, I send you an email, you click on a link, it does a reverse bind shell back to my command and control machine, and now I turn your entire network into a botnet. Now that's oversimplification, but what we
Yeah.
thought hacking was, it is not what it is in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it started out there, and I'm not anywhere near as sharp as I used to be because I went from network security from the pen testing side or from the red team side into just normal network security, which most people don't realize. Cybersecurity and network security are two different things. You don't speak the same language.
Let's dive deeper into this because we see in the markets people hiring cybersecurity professionals, and they kind of put all of them in the same basket, right? They
Uh-huh.
oh, you're a cybersecurity professional, you're a cybersecurity guy, you can do this, you can do that. But actually, it took me some time to understand that there is actually some difference,
Yes.
different roles, different responsibilities. I would like you to elaborate a little more about this.
All right. So the cybersecurity, I would say network security is if you split them off like that. So say cybersecurity is the overarching and then you split them out, right? Network security, for the most part, you're not doing the cybersecurity side. The cybersecurity side is like incident management, SIM, pen testing, EDR, managing that stuff, managing identities. That the network security guy maybe is like, okay, you're dealing with NAC at that time, right? Because you'll be surprised. You see somebody in cybersecurity and you say, okay, I need you to configure, you know, authentication for OSPF. They have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
And then if you turn around and they say, okay, I need you to configure the SIM, most of the network security guys don't know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
they play two different realms. Now you need both of them because one's really monitoring the network to make sure there's not many breaches. Network security is kind of trying to put controls in place like configuring a firewall. Now that plays in between both because you might get a cybersecurity guy that configures the firewall, or you might get a regular network security guy that configures the firewall. They might play together, but that one fits in the middle. But if you're doing like network security on a switch, like you're doing private VLANs, that's not the cybersecurity guy that's going to do that. If you're doing network access control and you're configuring 802.1x, cybersecurity guy's not doing that, or girl's not doing that. I've been in plenty of situations where the network security team is configuring network access control. The cybersecurity team really is dealing with like SentinelOne and in that type of realm. Like they're managing the asset per se. You're trying to prevent people from just getting into the network. Cybersecurity is to make sure if someone gets in, someone's alerted, or you can do a response. That's the difference I see between the two. And a lot of people, when they hear cybersecurity, they just think it's all in one. We don't play together.
Yeah, because also probably because the companies, the way they hire, normally they put everything, okay, we need a cybersecurity guy, we need a network security. And in terms of raw responsibilities, they are doing essentially the same thing. And one of the reasons why it took me some time to understand the difference between these is that initially I was working as a network engineer, but I was also managing firewalls, NAC, looking at IDS, IPS, so this kind of stuff. And when I start to look at other companies, at other roles, I noticed that the network engineer roles were very specific about connectivity. The network security was about security in the network. Like if you're trying to configure EIGRP, OSPF, this kind of thing, okay, how to secure that? And then you had these guys like blue team, red team, and purple team, and
there you go. They're not even in the same vein as a network security person. Not even in the same vein. And it's funny, as you just said about network engineers versus NetSec guys versus cybersecurity guys, right? Or girls, right? The easiest way to understand this is if you look at the body, and I always use this analogy here. If you look at the body, the network engineer's job is to get the blood, which is the data of the network, to the organs as fast and efficient as possible. That's you worry about connectivity. That's it, right?
Yeah.
I need to get the blood or the data from point A to point B fast and efficient, right? NetSec people are supposed to put enough. They're like the T cells. When something happens, they're supposed to put enough controls in place, enough security in place that if something they're trying to keep the bad guys out, right? Put it like that. They're trying to keep something from infecting the blood. The cybersecurity people are, if something were to get in to the body, it signals something to you, the person, that says, hey, something's wrong here. We need to do something about it, right? So if you look at it like that, a lot of people get that analogy instead of just trying to break it out and actually explain every nuance between network engineering, NetSec, and cybersecurity. Right? If you think of it in those three ways, it's easier to understand.
Okay.
Because it tells you exactly what role you play. If you're a network engineer, you care about connectivity. If you're a NetSec person, you care about, putting security controls in place to keep the bad guys out. If you're a cybersecurity person, a true cybersecurity person, you are there to, if something goes wrong, you're the detection system, which is another thing I want to get into from it. You're the detection system and response system. Hey, if something does affect the body, I know about it and I'm doing something about it.
Okay, so this looks like it's not just wisdom from reading. This is wisdom from applying and years of experience. So let's get to
getting it wrong and getting it wrong
and getting it wrong.
Get it thinking you're in this role and you're not really in that role, and then you find out you're not in that role when you get told that's not your role. So that's how I'm breaking it down.
So how you got started into how do you get into the market, like professionally working as a IT or cybersecurity engineer? How did you start professionally?
So how did I start professionally? So I started again from the Wild Wild West days as a PC tech. I used to work at this company called Gateway Computers that doesn't even exist anymore. We used to call it the cow store because their logo was a box that was made into a cow, right? But there's only so much you can do as a PC hardware technician, right? This is when, you got to step into the network. Now, I tell everybody, you're going to need to cut your teeth on the help desk, right? You're not going to get into a network engineer role, cybersecurity role, NetSec role if you've never cut your teeth on the help desk, because you don't even know what kind of problems you're going to get to, right? Understand, okay, the interaction between you and, if you're a corporate engineer, right? And I'm strictly talking about corporate engineer. Consulting is a totally other beast that most people won't be able to transition to, right? And we'll try to get into that.
Yeah, man, I'm taking notes.
Yeah, and then if you want to, now you have to, once you cut your teeth on the help desk, this is your fork in the road, right? Because on the help desk, you may deal with a little bit of networking, you may deal with a little bit of server work, you may deal with telecom. It depends on who you're working for. Now you have to make your decision. Do you want to be a server person or do you want to be a network person, right? I always tell people the servers people are the people that build the train. The network people are the people that build the railroad tracks, right? So you have to figure out what you want to do, right? If you go into the server world, now you're talking about, VMware or whatever Broadcom calls it nowadays, Nutanix. You're talking about VMs, you're talking about VDI, you're talking about all of that stuff. That's what you build. If you're talking, but none of that matters if the railroad track's not there. Like if you don't build a network, none of that matters, right?
Yeah,
this is why,
just a box.
Yeah, just a box. That's why from a pay scale perspective, the network engineers always get paid more than the server people. Because none of that stuff matters if I can't get the data where it needs to go, right? So now when you go from a network engineer standpoint, now it branches out even more because now you have to pick a vendor, right? You got Cisco, you have Juniper, you have Aruba, you have
Arista, and other ones.
You have so many different ones right now. Here's the key. If you go with the least market share provider, which is, let's just be clear. Cisco got the market share, right? Let's be honest. Cisco right now has the market share in enterprise space. They're kind of getting their butt kicked in data center by Arista, but that's a whole nother situation. If you go with the least market share vendor, you might get paid more than a Cisco person, but those jobs are few and far in between because nobody uses the equipment. So it doesn't make sense. Now, Juniper kind of kicks butt in the service provider space. Again, Cisco has the campus kind of on lockdown. But it depends on where you want to go because networking has another couple tracks. You got regular route and switch or enterprise as they call it now. As you can see, I'm dating myself because I got it when it was route and switch, right? Then you have service. You got service provider. Then you got security. This is your network security. Then you got wireless. Then you have data center. Like there's so many different avenues you can go with networking. So you have to pick a track and you have to stick with it. That's the key. And why I say you have to stick with it, and this is where I say you have to be a certain kind of person to be in networking, especially if you start going for certifications, you're going to fail. So if money is your number one thing for this, you're not going to last long. And I see a lot of people, you can make six figures in cybersecurity. You can make six figures in networking. First of all, you're not good. It's very rare that you're going to make six figures out the gate in any networking. It's not happening. You haven't proved yourself to be able to maintain the network. Again, consulting is totally different. But you can't just be the money first person. And I didn't understand that until I failed my first CCIE because you're spending about 10 grand. With studying, travel, registering for the test, all that stuff. And what I tell people is, I won't know you serious in networking until you failed the CCIE. Because are you willing to put up another 10 grand to go for it again?
And we'll get into details about your CCIE because it's a long journey to get the CCIE, and I want to extract all the details from you. Okay. But you started this company as help desk and look into different things, right?
Yep.
And then you decide what I'm going to networking, data center, security.
Networking was easy. Networking, the route and switch was easier for me to understand. Right, the server stuff, I tried it. It wasn't something. Got to give you a spark, right? It got to like, oh yeah, I love this, right?
Yeah.
And on the server side, it didn't give me that spark. It wasn't tangible for me. And then when I went into the networking side, and when I started, programming the switch, the routers, it was like that was it for me. It was easy to pick up. Once I got the spark and it was easy for me to pick up, I went 10 dose deep all the way down the rabbit hole. So I try to learn everything. I mean, firewalls, it was like PF Sense was the first one. Then, WatchGuard. Then it went to Sonic Wall. Then it went to Juniper SRX. Then it went to ASAs. Then it went to, I tried to learn everything. And I don't recommend people try to do that. That's just me.
Okay. Why not?
Well, because here's the thing. In the networking game, you can probably be an expert at two things and okay at everything else.
Okay.
Right? If you are a FTD person, let's bring it to nowadays. If you're an FTD person and you're an expert at FTDs, you probably could be an expert in Palos, right? And maybe be proficient in Fortinet. But then if you try to go to Checkpoint, you try to go to Juniper, it's just not going to happen. It's way too much syntax that you have to learn. Now, again, next generation firewalls are pretty much all the same now. It's just you have to know how they do it in their version.
Yeah.
So once you understand the concept of a next generation firewall, it's easy to you just have to learn how, okay, if I need to do SSL decryption, all right, I know how to do it on FTD. How do they do it on a Palo? You don't have to learn the actual concept of SSL decryption because you know it, right?
Yeah.
But if you, like for the CCIEs and stuff like that, if you're trying to go to the mountaintop, so to speak, it takes a long time to become an expert in that, right?
Yeah.
Trial and error,
for sure.
slamming your head into the wall, your eyes is popping out your head because you're configuring stuff that's not working, and you're trying to figure it out, and you're like, I gotta figure this thing out. You kind of don't want to keep going up that mountain unless you're like somebody like me that's like, all right, I'm gonna go up again, and then I'm gonna try to go again, and I'm gonna try to just to see how much you can go. But I don't recommend somebody to try to learn everything at once. And I think the problem really is these job descriptions, because if they were to hire the person that they actually got in the job description, the pay rate that they're putting on there would not happen. You want a double CCIE. They also have to know automation. They got to know AI. They got to know how to do programming. They got to know. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So stick to something that gives you a spark, though. Right? Some people are like, they love wireless. Like they can talk to wireless through and through. Yeah. Stick with that if that's what you're doing. If you like route and switch, stick with that. And I'm saying it doesn't have to be Cisco. Just if you like route and switch, stick with that. If you like security, stick with that. If you want to move into the cybersecurity realm, that's a little harder nut to crack, because you definitely need a whole bunch of experience to really cash out in cybersecurity, right? And I know a lot of people will say, again, the six-figure cybersecurity job, that's not the first job you're going to get, right? So again, do not make money your first motive. Now, it could be your second motive, but don't make it your first, because you will not last in this game.
Okay, so something that I noticed is that you have this pleasure, I would say, for studying and for learning new stuff. And I'll talk with many people, and they have trouble studying. So how do you find interest, or what is your study strategy? So you just decide, okay, I'm going to pick up Juniper, Palo Alto. Do you have any strategy, something that keeps you motivated, or to what you're curious, right?
So curiosity and always wanting to be the top guy, right? You want to run in a pack of top people. So if you always, and it doesn't happen when you first do it, right? And the one thing I want to tell your guests here is, don't look at people like me and you and compare where you're at. Everybody had to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Everybody you didn't just jump off the porch and you instant CCIE. Like, that's not going to happen, right? So you're supposed to, you start where you start. Now, you can use double CCIEs, 777 CCIE. You can use a little bit of motivation, but just know there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Just put your head down, do the work. Now, in terms of how do you keep motivated, lab every day. literally, like I lab every day, even if it's stuff I already know like the back of my head. You lab it every day, all right? And plus, you got to have a love for this stuff. And to get into wire sharking and get into the ones and zeros and understanding, oh, if I'm gonna do MPLS with OSPF and there's a down bit that stops redistribution from the other side, like to rattle that off like that, you really gotta love this stuff, right? Like you really, because a lot of people don't want to get that granular, right? You start talking about MPLS and EIGRP, you know, pre-best path selection stuff before anything. It's starting to bring back memories, right? It's like, so in order to do that type of stuff, you got to lab every day. Because here's the thing: what keeps me motivated is the fact that I know that if I lab every day, or at least try to lab every day, there's going to be something that I didn't know that can do that. There's so many things that I found out on a mistake. Like I was trying to figure something, and I was like, oh, I don't even know what that command does. Let me read it. A lot of my studying is trying to configure and get up to a certain point and then go look it up, right? Because there's no point of, if you already know it, you already know. There's no really need to look that up again. It's trying to do something new, get to a certain point of frustration because it's not working, and then go figure it out, right? Then go get the paperwork. Right? Because if you can get all the way up to that one point where it's like, oh, it's like one or two things that I'm missing, then you kind of already know it, right?
Yeah.
You kind of already know it. And if you can talk to somebody and actually relay what you're trying to do, like if you can explain it to somebody that's not in your field and they get it and they kind of understand what you're saying, you know it, right? If you can't really break it down layman's term, you don't know it yet. You're just regurgitating what's in the book. Right? Me and you both know, and a lot of other people, it's CCNP, CCIEs, other vendors, they know that book is not always right. You go ahead and try to put that command in there and see what happens.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because the first time I noticed that, I felt, how come the book is wrong? The book can't be wrong. I remember this when I was studying for CCNA security, and I was like, this is wrong. But the vendor can't be wrong. I was complaining, like I was right, but I wasn't accepting that I was right and the book was wrong. And the guys, they can be wrong.
They could be dead wrong. They could leave you in this. They could put you in a position. Oh man. And this is another thing I'll tell your audience. If you're going to be a network engineer, there are going to be days where it's going to be an outage and you will be up. And this is probably going to have some trauma to us. There are such things as 48 hours, 72-hour outage where you're up for that long, especially if you're doing like a cutover. That's the first thing I tell people. Okay, you want to get into this game? All right. Are you willing to do a 72-hour cutover where you're not going to sleep? You're drinking coffee, or you're sleeping in the data center, or you're doing something like that. You're getting 2 hours of sleep, lean on top of a data rack like this, while your partner is configuring, and then he taps you on he or she taps you on the shoulder. Okay, it's your turn, and he's literally standing like this on top of a data rack, and you're configuring for the next 8 hours. A lot of people can't stomach that. And I've been on plenty of migrations where it's like 72 hours. You're doing a Nexus 7K migration to ACI. It's 2 days. The sun is you actually saw the sun go down, and then you saw the sun come back up. Like,
the sun is looking at you. You're still there. You're still here.
The sun's like, man, you still there? I went to sleep. Like, what's going on here? So I mean, it's for the study, and I want to get back to that. You definitely, if you lab every day, you will find a way to study, right? And plus, what's your goal? Again, this goes back to the money not being the first thing. Me getting the CCIE twice, it wasn't a money thing, because we're probably going to get to this. After a certain one, like you get one, your life going to change. Obviously, you get two, you realize your life don't change as much, right? The pay raise doesn't get a double. It doesn't happen. You get three, now you're just doing it because you want to do it, right? At that point, right? Unless you're working for like a VAR or something like that. The monetary incentives don't come after
just be getting more certifications, right?
Yeah, you getting more certifications, but you also getting more responsibility. So
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, you get one or two of these things. Now they're like, okay, we're leaning on you for everything, right? So now you
Mm.
got more responsibility. If you start managing a team, you got to worry about them. They coming to you for everything. So
Yeah.
be careful trying to go for any kind of expert level certification. It may be more than you want it, right? And this goes
Mm.
back to how bad do you really want to stay in here, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, you're gonna get paid. Don't get me wrong, you're gonna get paid, but it's gonna come with responsibilities and a whole lot of headaches that you probably didn't see coming.
Yeah. So there is this study motivation,
Yep.
and so another thing that I would like to understand is, do you use certification as the drive where, like, do you always take certifications to learn something new?
Nope. So I'll just learn it just to learn it. Like I have, I did. Do I have an INE inscription? I had an INE inscription. I go to Oraha. I'll use YouTube. It does. I'll just learn it just to learn it because I hate being in a conversation and they're talking about a piece of tech that I have no idea what they're talking about. Right.
Mm.
So even if I get a base level understanding of it, then I can have at least a surface level conversation. And then if
Mm.
it's something I like, that's when I'll dive into it. Case in point, AI, right? We've all heard the AI thing, right? Now, technically, AI is just large language models, but we use the term AI to, describe it.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything, right? AI, everything. So it's funny when you get to somebody, there's the AI actual model, then there's the networking for AI. I'm not concerned about the training the model, all that stuff, the inference and all that. I'm with the AI networking because I don't care what it is, it still needs a network. So, you have that surface level conversation. And then I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. So that's when I just went head first into, how to build AI networks. This is where you have your spine and leaf cross architecture. You have your the GPU backend, you got the storage, and you got the front end. 3 separate networks. Now your GPU backend is going to be the AI thing. I don't think it's not going to get down lower level because a small AI cluster can cost you like $2 million. The most small businesses are not going to be able to use that. But the technology behind it is fascinating, right? You can either
Yeah.
use Nexus, you can use NVIDIA's thing with InfiniBand, and they got their own switches. Then they have open Ethernet, which this is really cool. You could take a bare metal switch and then you can actually install what operating system you want, right? And that is on the AI side. So now you see where it's like, okay, you always will have networking. So you can still weave your way into AI and just focus on the networking part, right?
Yeah.
And right now that's the hottest topic in the world. So building AI networks everybody loves those things, but it does take some experience because just those GPU servers alone from a power perspective and a heat perspective, you can't just put them next to each other or on top of each other because they'll roast each other.
Okay.
So it's things like that, I don't always use certifications certifications to me means you have some fundamental knowledge, right? You have some fundamental knowledge, and the higher you go, you have more knowledge. But I'm pretty sure you have run into this where someone has a high level of certification and you talk to them and you're like, you don't really know what you're talking about because that's not how that works, right?
I even had I had a conversation with someone today about this. I said, don't try to get this certification if you don't know. Like, it's going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Because they're
Don't do it.
expecting you to know, right?
Yeah.
That piece of paper is a third-party validation that says you know what you're talking about.
You know.
And I've seen in some situations something goes bad, and they're
Yeah.
looking at you, and they're like, and you're like, I don't. If you say I don't know what I'm looking at, then that's
Man.
you're done at that point.
You're done. You're done.
You're done.
Your credibility is on the floor.
Credibility's gone. Credibility is
Yeah.
gone. And you know what the problem with the Cisco one right now is? I've made a lot of, and this is for my CCNAs, CCNP people out there, learn how to troubleshoot. Back when we took it, they had a troubleshoot exam in the CCNP. It was your T-shoot exam. You had to do switch, route, and T-shoot.
T-shoot.
T-shoot was probably the best class and the best studying that you had to do because it gave you a methodology on how to actually troubleshoot network problems.
Yeah.
Now, you just know how to configure it. When it blow up, you'd be surprised. People don't even know what the first thing to look for. You know how many times I've seen people hours, 2 hours, and the cable was unplugged? They're trying to go routing and all this and look at layer 2 and all this. And it's like, did you start at layer 1? Is it physically connected in? Oh,
What is the
unplugged
strategy
it.
you're using?
What is the strat? But they don't teach the strategy anymore. With the T-shoot exam, you had to know the Cisco troubleshooting methodology in order to pass that exam.
Yeah, top to bottom, bottom to up, divide and conquer.
Divide
You
and
have
conquer,
a strategy, man. You need a strategy.
And
it's not like
that'll help you in that'll help you in the CCIE because they do break stuff. And if you don't know troubleshooting methodology, you're not fixing it. It's not happening. So
no. So it is important to have certifications, but be sure to learn them.
Certifications are not
become specialist, right?
Yep. It's not the end all be all. Because I know people that don't have certifications and can talk circles around people who do, right? So that's how you got to take it. Like, what good is the certification other than HR, getting past HR? What is good getting a certification if when you get in a technical interview you get fried? Because there's going to be somebody like me or you standing there like, okay, we want to do a technical interview. All right.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? And then they're not going to give you they'll start off with a softball question to see what's going to happen. And then it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And you may not get one technical interview. You might get an interview with the junior person and then the senior person and then the principal. So that's 3 separate technical interviews that you got to go through.
Yeah.
You can't fool. So you might be able to fool the junior person, but once you get the senior and principal, they're looking to tear your head off.
Yeah.
You better know what you're doing.
So guys, just pay attention to this. Certification is great, okay, but become a specialist. Don't chase just the paper. It might get you an interview, but don't chase just the certification. It won't help you if you don't become the specialist guy. So let's jump a little bit from certifications. And you mentioned about, and I wrote it, consulting engineer, because at this level, you're getting some experience still in your professional career growth. Mm-hmm. You consider yourself a network engineer, or you're still growing?
I am. When I first started out, I was a network engineer. Now I'm a consultant, right? And the difference between the two, would you like me to explain the difference between the two? At least what so the difference between the two. This is going to, and this is probably going to help. This is the most valuable piece of information you're going to get here. Anybody that's looking at this, because there's 2 different skill sets you have to learn. So when you're a network engineer, we're going to talk about corporate network engineer. When you're a corporate engineer, you know one network, and that's the person you work for, right? And you're on the cost center. You're on the cost side of the ledger, right? So you're looked at as a cost, right?
Okay.
And this is why in the corporate engineering side, you're only going to go up so far, right? It's only up so far because the more knowledge you get, it's not profitable for the company, right? They don't sell your services. So the more certifications you get, actually the more expensive you get, right? And their job is to try to minimize the costs, right? So it doesn't really pay that much to just be a corporate engineer for the rest of your life because they don't sell your services. So the smarter you get, the more expensive you are. And again, if a business goal is to minimize the cost and maximize profit, you can see where they don't got the best interest in heart there, right? Also, as a corporate engineer, we tend to want to just put our heads down and just at the board, right? That skill set is only valuable up to a certain point. So then how do you move up the ladder? Well, now, if you're not going to be, an IT manager or a VP or something like that, trying to move up that way, your next thing is to now become a consultant. Here's where people fail at being a consultant. You have to have soft skills. You need to be able to talk to somebody. See, in the corporate engineering side, you are in the maintenance mode. You maintain what's already there. Nobody likes, they go by this place. If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it.
Yeah.
That's how they go it, right? When you get into the consultant standpoint, you are now trying to sell outcomes. You're no longer talking about, because you're not talking to the engineers anymore. You have to be able to sell not only the engineer, but the mid-management and upper management. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people crash and burn because they're not people, right? They can't have a real conversation with somebody. So if you can't relay an outcome and certainty, like what I'm saying is going to get you the outcome you want, like upper management cares about, business objectives. Is this going to handle my business? Is this going to hit the mark for the business objective? Mid-management, is this going to be a successful project? The engineer is when the consultant leaves, if I'm going to be able to manage what got put in place. And you need to be able to convince at all three levels and talk at all three levels. You can't talk to the mid management the way you talk to the engineer. You can't talk to mid management how you talk to upper management. So you got to be able to weave and code switch at all levels. A lot of people struggle with that, right? They're so ingrained in the ones and zeros that that's the only level they can talk to. So guess where they end up at? On the delivery side of the house, right? Of consulting, right? So there's the pre-sales part and then there's the delivery side, right? Delivery is almost a rock's throw away from just being a corporate engineer, right? But the smarter you get in the consultant role on the delivery side, you actually are in the profit center when you're on the consultant side because they sell your services. So the more knowledge you get, the more services they can sell, which means the smarter you get, the more money you can get because they sell what you know. They sell your knowledge, right?
Okay.
On the pre-sale side is you usually go from delivery to pre-sales because, delivery people don't want to be delivery forever. So you go over to pre-sales, but you need to have those soft skills because now you're closer to the money because ultimately you're selling you're an architect now. So now you're talking about outcomes. Okay, what is the outcome I'm trying to get? You're trying to solve business problems with technology. Corporate engineer, not even close. They're not even ever going to do that. They're in maintenance mode. Delivery actually is going to deliver on the architectural design and what that the pre-sales person said. All right. The architect, when have you ever seen an architect build a bridge? Never. They design the bridge, they sell the outcome, and then construction people go do that. They look at the plans and say, okay, we're good, right? So if you're trying to, and this is the secret, if you're trying to make money in IT, you got to get as close to the money as possible. Meaning you got to get as close to the money conversation, which is the outcome conversation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Please. There was an interruption there.
Oh no, it's okay. So you got to get as close to the money as possible, meaning you have to be close to selling the outcome to the person that writes the check. Ultimately, you're going to work side by side with the salesperson. They own the relationship, but you sell them from a technical standpoint, right? Your job is to sell certainty that what I'm telling you is going to work, right? And then you back it up with the logical technical knowledge. A lot of people might have the logical technical knowledge, but when it comes to selling, a lot of technical people don't like selling, right? They
don't know. Right.
They hate it. So they never get past a certain point, right? Because the logical progression, unless you're going to be a corporate engineer for the rest of your life, is moving into consultancy. It's the logical progression because you're going to get tired of just dealing with one network, right? When you become a consultant, you dealing with multiple networks. A lot of corporate engineers, unfortunately, they don't learn anything outside of what they did, right? That's why it's so hard for them to move around because they, you might get routing and switching, and that's all you did for 20 years, right? But then you become a consultant, you're dealing with route and switching, you're dealing with wireless, you're dealing with network security, you're dealing with microsegmentation, you're dealing with multiple different type of networks, IoT, or IT, OT, stuff like that. You're dealing with, SASE, you're dealing with SD-WAN, you're dealing with all kind of stuff when you're a consultant. So you're never stale, and consultancy actually keeps your brain functioning. And it goes back to the question you said, why do you keep studying? Because you don't know what network you're going to get to tomorrow, right? Corporate engineer person, again, if you're good with that, that's fine. But just know you're always going to just know that network. And that's what most people end up not studying because they're like, look, I already know the network I'm in right now. What do I need to study for? I know everything in this network. And then, unfortunately, if a bad situation happens, you're stuck because you're like, I know this, right? Think about it. I used to have a NetWare, Novell Networks CNE. Novell doesn't even exist anymore. Right? If I just focused on that, I'd be done. So you're gonna have to become a consultant at one point, working for a bar, working for yourself or something like that, and that will keep your brain always learning something because you never know what network you're going to get into, right? And you get on the delivery side, and then eventually, if you want to start being monetarily compensated, now you're going to have to start speaking a different language of outcomes, business objectives, solving business problems with technology, right? If you can't do that, then you have to stay in either corporate engineer or delivery role.
Okay, so many people aren't aware of these, I would say, they're not phases, but different scenarios. And you described in a clear way that I couldn't find the words. So we have the corporate engineer is what you do for a company. You work for
Yep.
a company essentially. And if you like what you do, if you want to grow, like become a manager, a team lead, that's okay. You can continue working as a corporate engineer. If you want to grow beyond this ladder, if you want to learn more, because inside the corporate environment they don't want you to grow that much, then you have to become a consultant
Yeah. You
and
have to.
probably work as a consultant for another company or work as a freelance. Okay, in the practical ways, how can we guide someone to like identify this is where you are and this is where you should be? Or is there something like we could say you're not in the right place and probably you should move to this space to become a consultant or to probably work as a freelance, or probably you shouldn't become a freelance at all?
Yes, there is one indication is, do you like talking to people, right? Can you do a presentation? If you can't do a presentation, don't become a consultant, right? If you have a hard time convincing somebody to your side of the fence on an idea, don't become a consultant. Because in the consultant game, it's really about transference of emotion. And the emotion you're transferring is certainty. It's always going to be certainty. What I'm telling you is going to work. If you have a problem relaying that certainty to somebody, don't become a consultant, because when you go into those rooms, you're not just talking to upper management, you're talking to another engineer that's on the side. Their job is to poke holes in your idea from a technical standpoint. And if you can't stand on your own 2 feet and defend your idea, you're not going to make it as a consultant, right? And that's fine. You don't need to be a consultant if you do not have the soft skills. If doing a PowerPoint presentation for somebody gives you like anxiety, it might not be for you. It might not be for you, right? And that's fine. Now, from the delivery side, if you are a person that likes to be in the weeds all the time and are a ones and zero person and that's all they want to do, then being a delivery person on a consultant side is fine, because you're rarely going to have to deal with the corporate entities upper management. Now, you're still going to have to deal with them when you're doing the project. So you're still going to have to relay your ideas, because there may be somebody that wants to, oh, I'm going to test you. All right, why should we do BGP this way? You're going to need to have an answer for that, right? But it's less on the delivery side of the house. It's a lot on the pre-sale side. When you close to the money and they get ready to sign it's $150 million deal, they're going to ask you every kind of question in the world. And you better be able to, back up whatever idea you're saying. Now, if you're on the corporate side, again, corporate and delivery are like a rock stone away, right? Because corporate only deals with that one company, delivery deals with multiple companies. On the corporate side, again, if you're just somebody that just want to have your head down, do what you got to do and go home, that's fine. But just know you're pigeonholing yourself eventually, because you don't want to look up 15 years later and they have some proprietary software that you were like the expert on, and then something happens and you try to put that on a resume and they're like, we don't use that here. So your 15 years of experience no longer matters. You're starting at square one with the entry level person. So you gotta determine what you want to do. I don't suggest that anybody, if you're going to be a corporate engineer, learn their proprietary software and be the expert in that, because you're only as valuable to them. Right?
Yeah, that's gold.
That's how you're going to get caught and pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah.
Don't do that, right? Don't.
Okay.
Just be careful, because you will get burnt. I've seen a lot of people, they were like, I'm the expert in this, and then they went to another software, and then they were there for 17 years, and they got let go because they no longer in the software anymore. You don't want to be that person.
Okay, so there is a lot that we could unpack just on these in corporate environment, consultant, freelance. Probably another episode just for that.
Another episode.
So let's jump right into CCIE. Why you took the CCIE? Why did you take 2 CCIEs? How did you start it on CCIE?
So I took the first one because it happened. I said when I passed my CCNA, and that was that was it. It was like, all right, if I pass this CCNA, I'm going to the top of this thing. I'm not just going to stop at 1, right? I'm not going to stop at just the CCNA, right? Because I was seeing that And this was the pay thing, right? I see the person that got paid was at a higher cert. That's what started it off. But then as I started getting into the networking stuff, I totally forgot about the money thing. It was just cool. It was like, okay, CCNA, you learn a little EDGRP, you learn some OSPF. You don't really get the BGPD at CCNP. You learn stuff like layer 2 and layer 3, and you learn a little bit of security stuff. And I know the CCNA kind of changed now. But that stuff was just cool to me. And it was like, all right, well, if I know the basics of getting EIGRP up, well, what is the next level? Like, how far? Because you know what actually got me to context help? When I would do router EIGRP question mark and see all them lists of commands, I'm like, what do these commands actually do? So that's when I started like, all right, there's another level to this, because if this was the only level, there wouldn't be like 2 pages of extra commands that I don't know about, right? So then that's what got me into that. Then when I got to CCNP, I passed route, failed switch, got it again. Then I failed T-shoot because they had the simlet and I ran out of time, and then got it again. So then when I got my CCNP, it was like, all right, I had a buddy and we were like, do we really want to, we got to go to the top of the mountain, right? We got to try it. And again, I suggest if you're going for your CCIE, don't do it alone, because it's lonely. If it's you just by yourself, it's lonely. Get a study group, get somebody that's going with you on your journey. Because I had somebody, we went together. The second time, the security one, I went by myself, but the first one, we went together. The first, and we both failed, right? And then we sat there, we was like, all right, dude, we got to do it again. You know why? I'll tell your audience this as well. The only reason you quit is if you didn't put that work in, right? If you put 100%. A lot of work in, you're just not going to take a failure, right? You're like, I studied too much. I've been up to 2 o'clock labbing. My eyes is red. I'm getting anxiety. Sometimes your fingers is tingling.
Give me the details. Give me the details. How was it?
oh man, when I first was going for it.
Yeah, the first one.
The first one. So the first one, I gave myself. And I do this to myself all the time. I say I'm going to give myself a month to take a break and start over. It took 2 days. I was back to studying. It was in 2 days, right? So it was like, all right, usually your CCIE, right, to get all the knowledge, just the knowledge is like 2-3 years. Like to get all the knowledge that you would need, because the CCIE is not a best practice exam. That's how they get you. Because a lot of people who's passed, like that I know, like first time people that passed, they were people who weren't in the engineering field for a long time. So they didn't know anything about best practices. Yeah. How they burn you is if you actually start getting your career and you start learning best practices, if you go do that in the CCIE exam, you're going to fail, because it's not a best practice exam. They ask you to do stuff that you would never do in real life. You're looking at it as like, why would I do that? Well, that doesn't make any sense. I failed mine because when I do MPLS, I like to do the label range, and so I know what routers this label is. I did that the first time, failed immediately. You know why? Because you're not supposed to change anything. You're just supposed to do as much as possible to get it to work, right? But don't make these wild changes. And once you get to your CCNP, you got to make a decision. Period. You got to make a decision. Either I'm going to go get a CCNP and then something else, or I'm going to go to the mountaintop. So we decided to go to the mountaintop, man. And that period of studying, and when I say lab every day, this is where I get it from. When I was going for the CCIE, it was lab every day.
How much time you were putting?
After like working on all that stuff, as soon as the clock was off, it was like from 5 p.m. to 12, maybe 1, 2 o'clock every day. See, and this is why I tell people, do you really want to go for this? If it's just the money, you're not labbing for additional 8 hours after you finish working. Like this, you're not going to do it. But it was a goal of mine. So you have to lab every day. And I remember when I failed the first time, I said, I'm all right, I'm going to go back. And I remember we went back, me and the gentleman went back to the second time. And after we were done, now, first of all, you're getting the jitters as soon as you walk into the place. Your body goes light. You start feeling tingly. You just can't wait to get in front of the monitor. That's it. Yeah. Let me get in front of this thing, right? And there is a certain point where you can't study no more. you just got to go take it, right? You can't study everything on the CCIE. Nobody's going to get 100% on that. You don't even know you don't get a score. You just get a pass or fail, period. So at a certain point, you have to say, I know everything that I need to know, and I just got to go take the test. So then you fly out there, open the door, you sign, show the ID, and the minute you sign that paper saying you here, that's when all the anxiety kick in. Your feet are light, your hands are tingling, your heartbeat is just beating out of his chest. But then after a while, when you sit down, you take a breath, and they pop the screen up, and you start looking at what you need to do, eventually that goes away. By lunchtime, you're like, the anxiety is gone. You've already started configuration. You already did the diag. I was about to say T-shoot. T-shoot was when the first time I took it.
Yeah, you did the first version. Not the first version. The version before they changed on 2020.
Before they changed it. Before they changed it to the diag, it was a troubleshooting. It was a configuration side to it, right?
Yeah.
So once you get to about lunchtime, at that point, you know if you passed or failed. You know. Yeah. I remember we were sitting in there, and I looked across, and it was a guy literally like this. And I knew right then and there, he knew he failed. He knew he failed. But they tell you, even if you think you failed, don't get up and leave. Still start configuring. Because you might think you failed, but then you mess around and passed. But if you give up because it's a little hard, as soon as you walk out, it's a guaranteed fail. Yeah. So just keep and take it as a learning experience. You're probably going to fail the first time. You're probably going to fail the first time, right? So don't go in there. If you're going to do it, don't go in there thinking you're going to pass. Go in there like I'm going to give it my best shot, and let's see what happens. If I pass it on the first time, awesome. If I don't, well, I didn't really go in here thinking I was going to pass anyway. I just need to hit the books again. So now the second time comes around, and I didn't make the stupid mistake in changing anything. I said, I'm not changing no MPLS labels, none of that. Copy and paste is your best friend. Repetitive tasks, you better know how to use a notepad. You better know how to script on Notepad, because if you don't know how to script on Notepad and you have to manually type in commands, it's not enough time in the world. So you're
not a CCIE. You're not ready to take the CCIE.
Yeah, you're not ready to take the CCIE if you can't Notepad a configuration. Like Notepad to the point where you're putting the exclamation points where they're supposed to be at, all that stuff. If you don't know how to do that, you'll never pass the CCIE. You'll never pass the CCIE.
Period. No discussion about that. You can't manually
type all the commands they want you to do, right?
Yeah.
Now, you need to know how to script in Notepad, but you also need to know how to troubleshoot just in case you put something in Notepad that's not supposed to be there and it breaks something. You better know how to figure out what happened, right? So that's a little tip for the CCIE. So the second time comes around, and, the notepadding and all that. So I got real fast on this thing, right? I think I had like an hour left. So it was like, go back. This is the key. You want at least an hour in troubleshoot. Like, you want to get all your configurations, everything down, and then you want to make sure everything they ask you is there. And if it's not, you got an hour to figure out what went wrong. If you go through that test and you have 20 minutes to figure out if all this thing is working, you're going to fail. You better make sure, like, everything they ask you, you getting the screens they told you needs to show up. That needs to be there. All the connectivity needs to be there. All that stuff needs to be there. Second time goes around, and the guy goes to the bar, because we was like, look, we did everything we could. And I couldn't sleep that night. You know why? Because I was checking the site every 5 seconds, slamming that button, like, did I get my number? 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 So then he texts me, I got my number.
Oh,
and
man.
I think he's 6'9". So I think he's 6'9", 6'19", 6'9". That's his, right? And I'm like, congratulations, man. And I said, man, I'm going to just go get something to eat. And right before I said I'm going to go get something to eat, I said, let me check one more time. I hit that submit button. It came up, man. I fell out the chair. I was like, oh, I finally got this thing, man. It cost me, no lie, it cost me probably like $24,000 with everything, because I had to take it twice, right? And I was like, oh, I finally got this thing, man. And it was like, that's when life changed, right? Because not only do I have the certificate, the third-party validation, but I also had the experience. Having a CCIE with zero experience, you're basically entry level, right? So you got to get your experience along the way while you're going for your CCIE. Get your experience along the way. If you get a CCIE and the last thing they saw was you were on the help desk, they're not trusting you with a network, right? So you got to You got to, that's why the CCIE is a journey. Get it while you're on your journey. You need to be in the networking space while you're going for that, right? So that your experience plus certification actually gives you a better outlook, right? Better outcome when you're going for a job or something like that, right? If you just got CCIE and you was on the help desk, they're just gonna be like, all right, well, you're gonna start out as a level 1 engineer because we can't trust you. Your certification says we can trust you, but you don't have any experience. So now the second one comes around. And the second one was out of boredom. I'm not even gonna lie to you. The second one was out of boredom because I was messing around a firewall or something like that. I think it was an ASA I started out with PIX. So you guys might not know what a PIX
that's an old one.
You guys might not know what a PIX firewall is.
Might not know those ones.
It was a predecessor to the ASA and then all that good stuff, right? And now I'm going for, I'm messing around with the PIX. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then the ASA comes around. I think it was a 5505 or something, a little green box, 5505. And I was like, oh, this is cool.
Silent.
And the more and more I started playing with it, I'm like, okay, well, then let me see if, Cisco has a security track for this. And when they did, I was like, all right, well, let me go. It's the logical progression of, if you know route and switch, you know how to configure it, the connectivity part. Well, let's learn how to secure it. That's another thing. Some people go and get the CCIE security, and I'm like, well, how can you secure something if you don't know how it works from a fundamental perspective? You know how to secure, again, OSPF with, authentication, MD5 authentication.
Yeah.
But do you know how to configure OSPF? No? Well, then you don't know how to configure OSPF. You don't even know why you're configuring OSPF authentication for, right? Yeah. Okay. And this is when I used to do technical interviews. Okay, you know how to do OSPF authentication. What are you actually authenticating? Are you authenticating the data plane or are you authenticating the control plane? When you say that to them, they're like, you don't know anything about it. That's what I'm saying. You need to know you always need to know the network fundamentals. That's why if someone's going to go for CCIE, they usually go for enterprise, then security. Right? Okay. Enterprise, and I say this all the time, and a lot of CCIEs get mad at this. I always say the CCIE Enterprise is a hard certification. It is. It is very hard. I just told you the story how I failed it twice, all right? Or failed it. But it is the entry-level CCIE. Yeah. When you get it, you will realize that a lot of stuff that they teach in the CCIE, when you go to the other tracks where they deep dive into that, you realize, oh, I didn't know what I thought. I thought I was the expert in this, and I'm not the expert at all. Case in point, you think you know BGP when you take the CCIE. Go take the service provider track and see what happens.
Yeah.
You're going to realize real fast you do not know BGP at all, right? You know surface level, but when you go to VPLS, service provider, BGP, EVPN.
Layer 3 VPN.
Come on. When you start going to, FlowSpec. Multicast with the service provider network, QoS, all that stuff, you realize, I don't know BGP or QoS like I thought I did, especially when you're talking about QoS over a service provider network. And they're talking about, MVPN and not NGT. Yeah. Like you go into that and you're like, oh, yeah. I don't know anything. Or you hear about FlowSpec and see you don't know what you don't know when you're a corporate engineer because nobody really talks about this stuff because you're in enterprise. When you get to a consultant and they're like, oh, what do you think about FlowSpec? And you're like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
You find out what you don't know so fast when you become a consultant, right? You find out the holes in your knowledge super fast. So again, for you guys that want to go out there and really learn a lot, you have to be in the consultant realm. Because you're going to learn different stuff, right? Remote trigger, black holing. This is all service provider stuff. Then you go to data center because I know EVPN on service provider. Go do it in data center. Totally different.
Data center, yeah.
Totally different. OTV, totally different.
Or even something basic like I know how to configure Catalyst switch. Go to Nexus.
Yeah. Go to Nexus. You know how to do stacking. Oh, that's cute. Go to data center. Go configure stacking in data center. Oh, that doesn't exist. You got to do VPC.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, you know VPC? Go do back-to-back VPC. How about you do top of rack with the line cards? Remember those things? The line cards, the virtual line card. What was they? Fabric. I think it was they're fabric something.
Fabric extenders.
Fabric.
Fabric. The 2000.
The
I
2000 Fexes, top of rack Fexes, to figure that. Now they don't do that anymore. But the top of rack, you have your end of rack, which would be your VPC, and then your top of rack would be the
yeah,
Fexes that run across
yeah,
the board.
yeah.
Yeah, try to do that on the Nexus platform. Like there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Different tracks have different specialties that you, as a consultant, you're going to know a lot because, and I know I'm pitching the consultant thing, but you're going to know a lot, a breadth of knowledge going that way because, again, look what we're talking about. We're talking about Fexes. We're talking about EVPN on data center side, OTV on data center side. Then there's wireless stuff that you're going to have to deal with. Right?
Yeah.
Then if you're talking about data center, you might not even deal with Nexus on the data center. You might be dealing with Arista because Arista is kicking butt over there in data center, right? They have one code, and this is my pet peeve with Cisco. I think they try to be too smart sometimes, right? Because if they would just make one operating system that had all the everything, and doesn't matter what physical, it doesn't matter if it's iOS XR, doesn't matter if it's Catalyst, doesn't matter if it's Nexus. It's
The same operating system across different platforms.
Across different platforms. They would kill the market at that point because at that point, I don't have to try to learn, I'm on an XR. I'm doing BGP on the XR. I have to have a route policy to let the routes go in and out because that's how XR works. When you go to iOS, not the same. If you go to iOS XE, not the same. They got different stuff. So if they just combine it into one, I don't know how long it's going to take. Just give us one single platform, no matter what physical device we're putting it on, and they would probably give Arista a run for their money, right? Because then you don't have to really learn too much of anything.
Yeah, man, that's very, very easy. And from a management perspective, I don't have to train my staff to learn new products. Like in Cisco, when I got into a service provider, ASR, I thought, I can configure router. And now, no, this is ASR. What is the difference? You have to commit. Okay. You have to get inside these module and these, and it just takes a lot of, the learning curve is so long. And I remember, even with the data centers with Cisco switches, I remember the Fabric Extender because when I was managing a team, my folks, they didn't want to touch on Nexus because they had to learn everything from scratch. They were used on Catalyst switches. And then when they got to see Nexus, you have to enable this feature.
That's the big problem right there. You know how many times people get, that's fighting words, man, when it comes to Nexus, because they're like, you got to enable this, you got to enable that. Now, I understand from a memory perspective, I understand why they did it. But again, it should be the same way through. Like, okay, if we have to enable features, we just got to enable features no matter what platform we're on.
Period.
Right? Period.
Yeah.
It's almost like someone's in there like, we want to create a new OS. And it's like, from a market perspective, nobody has time to relearn an OS. Just make one. No way. Right?
Yeah.
Same thing when you say with ASRs, right? You're used to creating port channels. Okay, Ether channel, blah, blah, blah. Or port channel, whatever. Do that on the iOS XR. No, it's called bundle ID. What? And you're like, why? Port channel. That's all it needs.
That's it, period.
Period.
Yeah.
But, that's me being the little pet peeve here. And now, I want to pivot just with the new AI, these new platforms that are coming out, like Catalyst Center and stuff like that. If anybody's a CCNA, you're going to have to go up because all the stuff CCNAs can do, Catalyst Center can do it for you. If you're creating VLANs, Catalyst Center can do that for you. You're going to turn into, smart hands at one point, just plug it. It's to the point where if you're going to use ZTP and push down templates, they don't even need you to configure anything. Just plug it in. We're going to use the PNP process. We're going to discover a switch in Catalyst Center. We're going to push a day 0 template and then a day end template, and then we're done. All you're doing is literally plugging it into the box. So you're going to have to start upping your skills. Now, once you get your CCNA, and this is for, enterprise. Small businesses, your CCNA skills will probably still be needed, right?
Yeah.
But once you start getting into the enterprise, I'm telling you right now, they're trying to AI all the low-level workout, right?
It makes sense, man.
Anything that has to do with basic layer 2 configuration, stuff like that, they're trying to AI that right out of there. That's why everybody wants scripting. right? Oh, you need to know how to use, do Python scripting. You need to
Python.
know use NetMiko or Napalm.
Yeah.
You know why? Because you can write a script in NetMiko and send it to the switch and you're done. Oh,
Yeah.
Ansible. You just do your Ansible stuff, send it to the switch, and you're done. Now, caveat to that is you better know what you're scripting. This is where having that networking knowledge is needed because you can't automate something that you don't even know how it works. And that's where companies go wrong. They're just like automation, 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 automation. And you're like, I don't think you understand the skill set it takes to learn Python
Oh,
takes just as long as to learn network engineering. They don't speak the same language. So what I tell people is only learn enough coding to do what you needed to do. You do not need to be a Python expert, an Ansible expert. You need to know how to manipulate Python or Napalm or Ansible to do the networking part. Problem is, who's teaching automation? Programmers.
yeah, yeah.
No,
No,
programmers.
Yeah.
Programmers are teaching automation to network people, and we don't speak the same language. They actually teach it as if you already know Python. You're like, you're talking to me as if I already know Python. If I knew
Yeah.
Python, I probably wouldn't be sitting in front of you. So you need to
Yeah.
explain it to me in a way that's relevant to me. When they first started doing automation, a lot of the courses was like, oh, I'm going to show you how to use Python to build a website. I don't build websites.
I
build
did this.
networks.
This is what I did. Because no one was saying what you have to learn as a network engineer, and you just need to learn Python. Okay, I'm going to build Django framework. I'm going to use pandas. I
There
built
you
a
go.
website.
There you go. I'm going to use Django as the front end. You're like, this is not what I'm supposed to, I'm not here for this. Show
didn't
me
know.
how to do the one thing for network engineers. Now, you need to take a basic Python class to understand what a dictionary,
Yeah.
what a list is, what a variable is, and stuff like
Yes.
that. But once you know the basics, now tell me how to take the basics and apply it to network engineering, not take
Yeah.
the basics and apply it to websites. And they're still doing it to this day. To this day, they're like, "Oh, we're going to show you the basics," and then you're like, "All right, well, let's put this in layman's terms for network engineers," and they're still talking to you like, "No, you like you're a Python expert," and it's
Yeah, man.
like, "Hey, just show me how to." And the best way to learn for anybody here that's listening to this, the best way to learn Python or automation is start small. Can you configure a VLAN? If you can do that, next you can learn how to configure an interface. If you can do that, now you can learn how to configure a routing process. If you can do that, now you can learn a whole bunch of stuff, right? And a lot of this stuff, honestly, you don't really need to know syntax because now you can dig a file and use your normal notepad syntax and then push the file to the box. So you don't really need to know the Python syntax other than send this file to the box, which is mostly what most of the network engineers I know. That's what they do. They'll just say, okay, send config from file to this box, done. This is where you get into Jinja 2 templates and stuff like that if you really want to get into automation. But again, if you're going for your CCIE, you don't got time to double back and try to become a network programmer. It's just too hard. It's too hard. It takes too much time, and you're not going to keep. But by the time you learn something, and especially in the automation, by the time you learn it, it's obsolete.
Yeah.
It's a new way of doing it. That's the other thing that's wrong with automation and programming. There's too many ways to do one thing. If you ask 10 different network programmers, network automation people, how do you do some basic automation? They're going to give you 10 different ways to do it.
Script won't be the same for sure.
Script will never be the same. That's why it needs to be some standardization. Like, okay, this is how you do it. Get me to do it the one way, and then let me branch out and learn the other ways. But it should be, hey, this is the standard way we do this. All right? This is the standard way we do scripting. This is the standard way we do this. This is the quote unquote best way to do it right now. Right? Then if it's like, oh, I know a faster way to do this, this is where studying comes in, because you find out, man, this is taking way too long to do this. Is there a better way to do it? Now you go down that rabbit hole. Like you can figure BGP. I remember when I started doing service provider stuff, you can use templates. When I found out template peer sessions and template policies, I was like, I'll just do everything in a template and just inherit the template for all my neighbors. Done. Cut down my BGP configurations in no time.
Yeah.
But this is the way we do it. And then I branched off and went somewhere else. Like, okay, it's got to be a faster way to do it.
Okay. So Donald, let just to close this one because there is a lot that we have to unpack.
I can talk for days, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. So let's just give some practical advice, practical recommendations for anyone who wants to follow your steps, or what are the steps that you would recommend to someone that who wants to get into IT, into cybersecurity, become a network engineer? What are the steps that you would recommend, take into account that this new AI era that we're living right now? What would you recommend from point A to point B that this person should start doing or studying?
Okay. So the biggest thing, step one, is don't underestimate the work. Most people quit because not because it was too easy, it's because they underestimated how hard it was going to be. Right? So you have to make that decision like, hey man, if I'm going to do this, there are going to be some sleepless nights, there are going to be some aggravations, there are going to be times where I want to throw whatever vendor book to the wall. Am I willing to do that? Right? And you have to be honest with yourself. And you have to say to yourself, yes, I am willing to do that. And then you got to be honest with you. You got to keep your word to yourself. If you say I'm willing to do this, you have to keep that promise to yourself. If you can't keep the promise to yourself, don't even waste your time. That's number one. Once you make that decision, now you need to make, what vendor am I actually going to specialize in? And I would say pick one. Pick one and go as deep as you can with that, right? Even if you go into cybersecurity, you still need network fundamentals, right? You need to know how network fundamentally works. Once you get the network fundamentals piece, now the next decision is, do I want to advance what I already know? Now, as you're doing this in parallel, you're getting a job and getting that experience. Do not wait until you get the certifications to try to break into the field after you get your fundamental cert, whatever it is, Juniper's, JCNIA, CCNA, whatever is coming out. Once you get that, get yourself like a level 1 engineer. That's fine. And then once you get that, now say, okay, now let me start getting the advanced stuff, right? Because as your experience grows, along with the knowledge, you will go from a flat line, and then your knowledge and skill set will start going together like that, right? Then once you get that advanced cert, which is the professional level, you got that decision to make. Do I go back down and learn a different skill set and get professional? Or do I go for the CCIA? And based on the conversation, I already told you how hard and the commitment that you will not have a life when you go for your dates, husband, girlfriend, that's not happening. They got to be on board. If you're single, you're going to need a group because it's going to get lonely, man. When you out here just banging at configs all day, you got to be able to bounce ideas. Sometimes you might need to get some friends. Your friends group got to be close to you and say, hey, man, I need to go out because I'm about to burn this computer down. You see what I'm saying? I'm about to burn this switch down. So you want to get with that. Again, you have to understand what you're getting into. If you're going into cybersecurity, now you're talking about, that cybersecurity track and their own specific vendor stuff, right? And depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a red team, well, you're talking about offensive security. So you got to move in that direction. If you're talking about blue team, you're talking about defensive security, stopping the bad guys from getting in. So to be honest with you, defensive security isn't as sexy as offensive security. Everybody want to break in. Nobody really want to, I developed the controls to defend against cybersecurity attacks. That doesn't sound as sexy as I do pen testing. I got a book bag full of gear and I do all this Mr. Robot stuff, right? So it's not as sexy, but it's needed. Now there's a blend of the two called the purple teamer, which is somebody that knows pen testing, that knows offensive security, and they know defensive security, but they're not the expert in both. They're right in the middle. They can get you what you need to do offensively, and they can get you a little bit what you can do defensively. You're never going to see somebody that's great at everything. It's just not going to happen, especially the deeper you go into a topic. So we talked about get your fundamental knowledge, go get advanced. You at least have to get professional. That's it. Now, if you stop there, fine. That's fine. You can navigate the IT world at the professional level. May not get you an architect, may not get you closer to the money, right? To where you really get paid at, but it will change your life. Decent. I'm gonna use Cisco for example. My life changed at the CCNP level, then it changed again at the CCI. That's the only time it changed twice. After you get your CCI, you get another one, doesn't change as much. But when you get your CCNP, and your audience, let's talk about from a monetary perspective, when you get your CCNA, you get some decent money. Decent, right? You get your CCNP, you see that first CCNP bump from where you started, you was like, oh, I'm making it right now, right? Like this is what they're talking about. Then when you see the check when you get the CCIE, you like, oh my God, like the sleepless nights were worth it, right? That's when you get that, the sleepless nights, they were worth it there, right? Then you have to now expand your horizon on different, always be a learner. Never settle on, okay, I got the top cert and that's it. Learning is fundamental. The reason why I got into this, because you never stop learning. The minute you stop learning, you're obsolete. So with this whole AI thing coming out, I suggest you know how AI works. You know about tokenization. You know how to inference. Basically, right now it's chatbots, but basically interacting with the chatbot, knowing that it's taking your syntax, breaking it down to language that it can manipulate, and then it's out. They call it tokens, so it tokenizes whatever your input is. Then it finds the relationships, and then there's an output token, which basically converts what it rationalized back to human text, right? So every time you're actually typing in the AI, that's happened. It's called inference, right? So, but stuff like that, you're gonna have to deal with AI whether you like it or not. So learn AI, and don't just learn it from a surface level. At least learn how the tracks. What networks are behind this? What do we need from there's three technically different things that you need to do. So you have training, right? And then you have your inference, then you have production, right? So you train your model, you interact with it, and then when you are training, fine tuning, and then production, right? Know the different networks sizes that when you're training your model, you're going to have huge swaths of data, GPUs, huge networks. When you're fine tuning it gets smaller. When it gets production, it gets smaller. Be able to have those conversations. Then decide if you want to be a consultant eventually one day, right? Because that's the end all be all. If you look at a circle, it goes from corporate engineer, consultant, back to corporate engineer. And usually when you go back to corporate engineer, you're in your 50s. You don't want to deal with that no more. You don't want to deal with multiple networks. You don't want to deal with it anymore. You're just going to go back to corporate engineering, and you may mentor the next one that's going to go into that cycle. It's always a cycle. Some people stay a consultant and ride off into the sunset, but most people, they'll burn out in consulting for a little bit and say, you know what, I made my bones on that. Usually go back into corporate engineering, but the swath of knowledge that you got from consulting, you don't go back as a corporate engineer. You may go back as a VP.
Yeah.
You may go back as a director, senior level. Right? Now, if you try to get senior level just staying at corporate engineering, probably not going to happen because you're not going to get the knowledge. But if you go outside of corporate engineering, get the knowledge, and then come back to corporate engineering, now you're at senior level. Now you're director. Now you're senior. You're VP, maybe CIO, maybe CISO, stuff like that. But just out there, that's why you always see those people. They're always coming outside the company. They're not coming from inside the company. Because they went out there, did some consulting, got a wide breadth of knowledge, been able to, present and talk and then get more strategies, because you're never going to get all the knowledge you need in one company. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. You got to go outside of that, and then you come back. So, again, let me recap this. Start by, understanding it's going to be hard work. Don't underestimate the hard work. Make a promise to yourself that you're willing to deal with it, and then keep your promise. Number 2, get at least all the way up to a professional level in any discipline that you're in, because the fundamental level is not going to give you enough knowledge to actually become a network engineer per se, a true network engineer. You may be a level 1 person or like a network administrator with the CCNA, but to be a network engineer, you need to be at a CCNP, because then they'll trust you with the network and you can move along with your experience. Then when you're at CCNP, you can decide to go up and get that CCIE or whatever vendor's expert track is, or you can decide to get into the consultant game and kind of learn those soft skills that you're going to need. It's not just about engineering anymore. It's, can you relay those ideas? Can you sell your idea to somebody? Can you talk at those 3 levels that I was talking about? Can you move up the trust chain? Meaning, can you get the engineer to trust you, and then get the mid-management to trust you, and then get the senior managers to trust you? If you can't talk at that level and move up that trust chain, you're probably not going to make it as a consultant, right? And then after you ride out for a while, you can decide to go back to corporate engineering, or you can open up your own business, or do whatever you want. At that point, you'll have the certifications and you'll have the experience that you can stand on yourself, right? You can stand on it, because your confidence always comes from competence, right? If you're confident in something, you're going to be very confident in relaying your idea. And you see, when people aren't competent in the technology they're in, you can see their confidence level drop. Yeah. They got their head down, they kind of mumble, they don't really say anything. So as you're getting your technology skills, work on your soft skills. Work on the soft skills, right? And you'll be okay.